Hello there, Steve Williams here again. Thought I'd record a little video here towards sunset. I actually tried to go up to Tantalus, but it was too cold up there. It was blasting wind and people were playing all kinds of crappy music, so I'm doing this instead. Anyway, I'd like to talk a little bit today about how our reaction is the whole enchilada. The COVID-19 virus really wasn't that serious. It was very serious for high-risk people, and I'm 100% about protecting them. We should have gone all out to protect them rather than shutting down the entire culture. And because our reaction was so ridiculous, the collective reaction was so ridiculous, especially by local governments, I think they're the biggest culprit in this, that we've made the reaction much worse than the actual virus itself. Metaphorically, we use a nuclear bomb to blow up an ant, and turns out the ant actually survived the blast. We blew up everything else. That's not my own analogy. You got that from Daniel Horowitz, but that's just right. We overreacted. We blew up everything in sight except properly handling a virus that was, worse than the flu, but not by a hell of a lot. It really was manageable in other ways, the way we reacted to it, which was stupid and panicky, right? I'll give you an example. Look around at the beach park here. See, there's people all over the place. The whole park and the beach is full of people, but they just shut off all the parking to make it extra miserable. Up until, I think they're still arresting people here and there. I think it's hopefully slowed down a bit, but people all by themselves in the park at the beach, they'll roll up on them and arrest them, even though there's zero risk. And the science has come out that the virus dies in a minute and a half out in the sun. Fresh air and sun is the remedy. That shouldn't be what they're banning, what they're preventing us from by banning us from being in the parks and the beaches. You can be there, but you have to keep walking, keep moving. If a cop rolled up on me right now, he'd probably try to give me a ticket because I'm not moving. And I would resist. Not with violence, but I would split, Anyway, taxpayers are getting ripped off. Did you know that every time they classify a death as COVID-19, they get it? It's normally the Medicare reimbursement is $5,000. They get $13,000 if they classify it as COVID-19, and they're not requiring them to check and make sure if anything is even mysterious. If they remotely suspect COVID-19, they're putting COVID-19 on the data, on the certificate. The problem with that is, first of all, it screws, all the stats are screwed up now. Nobody knows exactly for real what happened. Secondary problem is they're ripping us off. Every time they do that, it costs the taxpayer $8,000. Every time they get somebody on a ventilator, they get $39,000, And they're not verifying it. So every time, every institution, all the funeral homes, many medical institutions and hospitals, they're throwing all kinds of COVID-19 deaths into that pile that aren't really COVID-19 deaths. COVID-19 may have been near them. It may have even been a partial factor, but there are thousands now who, that's not the primary cause of death, and yet they're being classified that way. We're having to pay tons of money for that, and it's throwing the statistics off and making things look scarier than they are. It's ridiculous, It's like Barney Fife and Chicken Little combined. They just panicked and flipped out on reacting to this, The local government tyranny has been unbelievable. Phil Murphy, governor of New Jersey, was asked by Tucker Carlson, something to the effect of, what are your limitations, your constitutional limitations on this? What about the Bill of Rights? And Phil Murphy literally answered, oh, that's above my pay grade, Tucker. What? That's job number one, you stupid asshole. Above your pay grade? You have no right, not only you have no right to be in there, I think people should be incarcerated for making an oath to the Constitution. He committed fraud. He made an oath to the Constitution, which he had no intention of keeping. He committed fraud on everybody who voted for him, So that's ridiculous. Anybody who doesn't know the Constitution should not be allowed as dog catcher. They shouldn't have the first step into any position of authority because that's their hard limitation. If they don't know what their limitations are, obviously they're going to be tempted to abuse. If you want to be abused, that's the people you want in power. If you want to be wise and have the people in power restrained, you make sure they know and adhere to the Constitution every freaking day. Not just now and then when the media reminds them of it, but every day. That should be their default mode, right? So I think right now we need to keep maximum pressure on all local governments and the federal government to stop being ridiculous. The federal government blew it by way overspending. They spent about $7 trillion by now. We already were in debt by, 250 trillion plus. Now it's probably up to about 270 trillion. That's unfunded liabilities. Everybody thinks it's only 25 trillion that they have on the books. That's just that number they come up with after the accounting gimmicks. The real number, and I didn't make this up myself. You can check with, I got this from a professor of Boston, University of Boston, professor of economics. I think his name's Kinslinger. He said, this is accounting gimmicks. The real debt is 260, 270 trillion dollars. So we got a big hole to dig our way out of, right? So we're gonna have to keep the pressure on local governments and federal government to stop being stupid and spending like drunken Marxists and panicking and closing everything down and half closing stuff. So that's the worst possible world. Like close all the parking and tell people that, yeah, you can go to the parks, but we're gonna screw up all the parking, all these busted up half-wit decisions going on. I keep reading about every day. It's just like every day, it's like a new contest. Who can be dumber, And because I guess there's a little panic in the air and people aren't thinking straight. I don't know what it is, but for some reason there's a lot of moronic thinking out there. So the question for today is, and I'll end with this, are we going to snap out of this? Are we going to snap out of this panic mode and get into efficiency mode? We need to get into efficiency mode, like a survivalist. Right? I'm not saying everybody should be a survivalist, but you should be like a survivalist right now, just to be, in the best possible place you can be as the government panics and ruins things right and left. I'd say, I hope there isn't a meat shortage, but right now it's probably a good habit to score some canned goods every time you go to the store, like those big boxes of Vienna sausages. I think there's 18 in a pack. They're like $8. It's not the best food in the world, but it's a great set of stuff to have in your closets, under your bed, just in case if things do get dire. Then you'll have some protein, maybe not the highest grade, but you'll have some protein on hand to help you get by until things get back to normal. So the question is, are we going to snap out of this and get back to normal, rational modes of thinking, or are we going to stay in a panic and keep screwing things up and making the hole bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger till we can't get out of it? Please be with me on pushing towards efficiency, snapping out of this, and getting back to gravitating towards wise and reasonable conduct day in and day out. All right, I hope you have a great evening, have a great weekend, have a great Mother's Day. Aloha from Hawaii.